nutrition in plants can be of two types. One is autotrophic nutrition, the other is heterotrophic nutrition. Autotrophic, the other is heterotrophic nutrition. So what is auto? What is the meaning of auto? Not the auto which we know. What do you mean by auto? So the meaning of auto is self. So there are certain organisms which can prepare food of its own with the raw materials available in the environment. So you call those organisms as autotrophs. You also call them as producers. So the very common example of autotrophs and producers are plants. So coming to heterotrophic nutrition, hetero meaning depend. So there are certain living organisms which totally rely on other organisms directly or indirectly for food. So these are called heterotrophs or consumers. So consumers, they are called consumers. So in today's video, we are going to discuss only about autotrophic nutrition. So now tell me, how do plants prepare food? Very good. By the process of photosynthesis. So we know that they utilize all the raw materials that are present in the environment for food. Tell me, what do they eat? What do plants eat, children? Do they eat idli, dosa, what we eat? No. So what do they eat? So we'll discuss now. So autotrophs prepare food by the process of photosynthesis. So what do you mean by photosynthesis? The meaning of photo is light and the meaning of synthesis is to combine. So what do they combine? Very good. The raw materials that are available in the environment. What do you mean by raw materials? What are the ingredients that we add to make biryani? Very good. So we have a big list that we use in preparation of biryani. Similarly, plant do require certain raw materials for their food preparation. Okay, you call that as raw materials. So plant requires certain raw materials. It requires certain inorganic substances. What are inorganic substances? Inorganic substances are naturally obtained substances, non-living substances. Naturally obtaining non-living substances. Say for example, what do we get from rocks? We get minerals. Then air, water. So all these are inorganic substances that are utilized by the plants for the production of food. So the first raw material used will be water, then air, and they also require two important components. One is sunlight, the other is chlorophyll. Okay, shall we get into the process now? Okay, so before entering into the process, you need to know one important thing, that the photosynthesis can occur in two phases. One is light phase, the other is dark phase. The light phase meaning in the presence of sunlight, photosynthesis takes place. A dark phase meaning in the absence of sunlight. So say for example, sometimes during rainy season we may not find enough sunlight. Even that time plants will also prepare food, but the rate of preparation will be low. Okay, so that you call it as the dark phase. So now we'll start with the process. How do they prepare? Now just imagine you are pouring water to plants. What will happen when you pour water to plants? Very good. The roots absorb. So the first raw material necessary for the plant to prepare food will be water. So when you pour water to plants, what will happen? When you pour water to plants, the root will take up the water and they will send it to the stem. From stem, the water will move to the leaf. Where do we prepare food, children? Very good. So we use kitchen. Similarly, the kitchen of the plant. Which is called the kitchen of the plant? Leaves. So leaves are called the kitchen of the plant, where the complete food production takes place. That is why you can also call it as the food factories of plant. Okay, so now, so just listen. So when you pour water to roots, what will happen? When you pour water to roots, the roots will take up all the water molecule and they will send it to stem. So from stem, where do they go? It reaches the leaf. So which is called the kitchen of the plant or the food factories of plant. What is the second raw material necessary? Air. Very good. So how do they get air? Very good. So every leaf will have certain tiny pores over the surface of leaf. These tiny pores are microscopic, which you cannot see through a naked eye. They require microscopes. So you call the structure as stomata. You call the structure as stomata. So let us see a small description about the stomata. So the stomata will have certain specialized cells called the guard cells. So you call these as guard cells. So this guard cell will be surrounded by epidermal cells, and you have certain structures inside called the chloroplast. So the whole structure is stomata. I told you there are certain tiny microscopic structures that are present on the surface of leaf called the stomata. So it has a specialized cell called the guard cells. And this pore, you call it as the stomatal pore. So what will happen? Whenever the plant is in need of air, the guard cell will just open and close. So it will be like this, like a gate. So whenever the plant is in need of air, they open and they close. I told you the water from the root will move to the stem. From the stem it reaches the leaf. So just imagine the water is filled here. The guard cell is filled with water. So what will happen when it is filled? Yes, the guard cell will swell. So when they swell, it opens. So the air from the environment will move inside. And when they open, what will happen? When they are exposed to sunlight, the water from the guard cell will be lost. So how do we excrete our waste? In the form of sweat, in the form of urine. Similarly, the excess water from the plant will be released out via the leaves through a process called transpiration. Just make a note of this, transpiration. So transpiration meaning whenever the guard cell opens, so the guard cell is filled with water. When they open, they are exposed to sunlight, which will make the water to be released out. You call that process as transpiration. It is like the sweat or urine that how we excrete our waste. Okay. So during that time, the air from the environment will get inside the guard cell. Again, when the guard cell loses water, it shrinks. So when obviously automatically when they shrink, it closes. So that the opening and the closure of guard cells help in exchange of gases. So what is the second raw material that we require? Air. So the exchange of gases takes place through the tiny pores that are present in the leaf. You should also know that not only leaf carry tiny pores, even the root will have tiny pores, as well as the stem will also have tiny pores. The root will have certain structures called root hairs, which helps in exchange of gases. And in the second case, the stem will have certain tiny pores called the lenticels, which will also help in exchange of gases. So not only leaf, even the root and also the woody part, the stem, will also help in exchange of gases. Any doubts here? Okay. Now I wanted to ask you a question. What air do plants breathe in? Tell me, what do plants inhale, children? Plants inhale oxygen or carbon dioxide? Okay, let me clear it. So plants normally they inhale oxygen like human and animals. So plants normally inhale oxygen and they leave out carbon dioxide. But since plants carry out photosynthesis the whole day because of the presence of sunlight, what will happen? They inhale carbon dioxide and oxygen. So you may ask a question, how? Both respiration and photosynthesis occur simultaneously. Say for example, photosynthesis. During photosynthesis, plant take in carbon dioxide and they leave out oxygen. And during respiration, plants inhale oxygen and they leave out carbon dioxide. So if this is a case happening simultaneously, you cannot find the amount of oxygen released in the environment. So what is the scenario behind this? Both the process occurs simultaneously, but the photosynthetic rate is fast comparatively respiration. So what will happen? Plants will take up carbon dioxide that are present in the environment and they release oxygen. So photosynthesis process is fast. A surplus amount of oxygen will be released out in the environment. After 2 cycles, after 2 to 3 cycles, respiration takes place. So photosynthesis is fast. So within that rate, between the gap between photosynthesis and respiration, you can find a surplus amount of oxygen released in the environment. So that oxygen is again utilized by the plants. Again the cycle continues. Can you understand? So normally plant will inhale oxygen like human and they release carbon dioxide. And this case is an exceptional case during night time. Why? Because in night time we don't have sunlight. So photosynthesis rate is very low, as I already told you. In a dark phase, a trace amount of photosynthesis can occur. But mostly during night time, photosynthesis will not occur. Only respiration takes place. So that is why people advise not to sleep under the trees. Why? Because what do they inhale? They inhale oxygen and they leave out carbon dioxide. So that carbon dioxide is highly harmful to us. Okay, so it is not recommended to sleep under trees during night time. So the second raw material that we require is air. I told you how exchange of gases takes place in stomata through root hairs and through lenticles. And you also know what kind of gas exchange takes place within the stomatal pore. Okay. Now the third raw material necessary will be sunlight. So let us see how sunlight is absorbed by plants. So the third raw material necessary is sunlight. So I told you that the leaf will carry tiny pores called stomata. So through stomata we got air, and through roots we got water, and the next we need is the sunlight. So there are certain specialized cells called the mesophyll. Mesophyll are specialized cells in the leaf which carry a cell component called chloroplast. I think you would have studied this in your previous classes, that every plant cell will carry plastids, that is chloroplast, which will carry a color pigment called chlorophyll. Why all the leaves are green in color? Yes, because of the presence of a pigment called chlorophyll. Some leaves are brown and some leaves are red, some are orange. It is because of the type of chlorophyll present in them. Okay. So we have the cellular organelles called the chloroplast. Within the mesophylls, that chloroplast will carry chlorophyll. So you can find chlorophyll present in the leaf. Okay. So when you take the structure of chloroplast, this is the structure of chloroplast. You can find it in cell. You can find certain structures like this. So the main function of these cells, you call these cells as thylakoids, with the main function is to absorb sunlight. So where you find this chloroplast? Within the leaf. Only this chloroplast will contain the pigment called chlorophyll. So the main function of chlorophyll is to trap sunlight. So this portion, this part is necessary to trap sunlight. So now you got sunlight too. So we got all the three raw materials. We got water, we got air in the presence of chlorophyll. So what is the main function of chlorophyll? Is to trap sunlight. So we got all the raw materials, which is the food for plants. So we have the three steps involved here. Let me tell you. So the first step is absorption of sunlight. So what will happen? Since you have chlorophyll, the chlorophyll will absorb sunlight. So the chlorophyll will absorb sunlight. So the first step is absorption of light energy. So absorption of light energy. The second step is the absorbed light energy help in converting the light energy into chemical energy. So the second step is the light energy turns into chemical energy. I will tell you what is that chemical. And the third process is conversion of or reduction of carbon dioxide into carbohydrates. Conversion of carbon dioxide into carbohydrates. So the first process is absorption of light by the chlorophyll. The second step is converting the light energy into chemical energy. So some process is taking place in order to convert the light, absorbed light into chemical energy. And the third process is the air. So what is the air? Carbon dioxide turns into the food. So what is the food for plants now? Very good. It is in the form of carbohydrates. So the food for plant will be glucose. So these glucose will be stored in leaves, and the stored form of glucose we call it as starch. So starch is considered as the food for plants. Okay. So the combination of all the raw materials combine together and form the food for plants. So plants store food in the form of starch, which is many molecules of glucose. Did you understand the concept? Yes. One important thing, this is a step usually takes place in plant, but it is an exceptional case in some plants like desert plants. Actually, this is a series of reaction. It should occur in series. Continuously it should occur. But in case of desert plant, one step will be skipped or delayed. Why? Because I already told you a term called transpiration. How the temperature will be in desert area? Yes, the temperature is very high. Just imagine the guard cell is filled with water and they are opening. What will happen when they open in desert area? The temperature will be very high. What will happen? Excess transpiration will occur. So, in order to avoid that excess transpiration, what will happen? The desert plant will store carbon dioxide as an intermediate product in the night time itself. So, I told you that plants will take up oxygen and they leave out carbon dioxide during night. So, that carbon dioxide will not be released in the environment. Instead, plants will convert that carbon dioxide as an intermediate compound and store it. So, in the daytime, what they do? The stored carbon dioxide will be utilized for the production of food. So, this is mainly done in desert plants in order to avoid an important process called transpiration.